We have a fairly backward audience here, I must say, in spite of the film society movement and all that. If you consider the large audience, it's a backward audience, unsophisticated audience.
If you ask any random Indian about these people, there's a very good chance they will recognize them. But this person, rarely anyone will. Ray put Indian films on the world map. His movies remain the finest portrayals of life, the eternal pain and suffering of humanity on earth. Portrayal of life is depicted in its bare bones, stripped down to the bare minimum in Ray's movies. Actors speak, cry, smile and mesh with life without any acting, without any makeup, without life's luxuries.
I was a kid. I was living in the Lower East Side, and the first film that I really saw about India was Pate Panchali by Satyajit Ray. And I realized it was a film that was made by Indians, for the world, not through other cultures. And it brought me to learn about the rest of the world.
I was so curious with this one, as I've simply never read or watched Satyajit Ray's stuff before. So here's my layman perspective on an on-screen adaptation of the one and only Satyajit Ray's short stories. Let's get started. Now this review is going to be a little different. I thought long and hard on how I'd like to represent my thoughts on this show, and since it has 3 different directors working on 4 completely different unrelated stories, I think each story needs to be thought of as its own movie. Well, short movies, of course, but not that short, really. An hour per story, still shorter than an episode of Sherlock. I will be rating each story out of 100. Followed by which I will be taking an average of all 4 ratings to give you my overall rating of the show. So sit tight, as this may end up being a long review, as it's pretty much 5 reviews stuffed into one video. Now let's get started for real. Episode 1, Forget Me Not. This one's based on the short story Bipin Chowdhury Smriti Brom. If any Bengali people are watching, I apologize in advance for murdering the pronunciations. Directed by Satyajit Mukherjee, this episode stars Ali Fazal as the main character and opens with a nice shot of the city lights from the window of a skyscraper. The camera pans to show us a long take of a woman walking on the same floor in this building and pretty much running into Ali Fazal. This woman recognizes him as he happens to be her lover from the past, but Ali Fazal doesn't remember a thing. Now he brushes this off as someone trying to take advantage of his status as he's a big businessman. He's later bombarded by multiple pieces of evidence of his fling with this chick, and the very fact that he forgot haunts the crap out of Ali Fazal throughout the rest of the movie. Now normally I suppose this isn't a huge deal, but his memory is praised endlessly throughout the movie to the point of irritation. So it's thrusted down our throats that it's a huge deal that he forgot. Why? Because he's apparently got the memory of a computer. The rest of the movie is about how and why one problem snowballs. The acting from Ali Fazal was great as usual. I think he's a super talented actor, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks that. That being said, I felt the writing was really off. Felt a little bit of cringe every now and then, and if you're familiar with the Tamil director Gautam Menon or the legendary multilingual director Mani Ratnam's recent garbage, a lot of dialogues had a similar artificial feeling to them. I give this movie a 60 out of 100. Engaging but very weird. That being said, it's a fairly decent setup for the overarching theme of the series. And no, that is not bad writing. Stick around till the end for the complete overview of the show to find out. Episode 2, Bahurupia. This movie is based on the short story Bahurupi, and this one's directed by Satyajit Mukherjee again. This is the one I was looking forward to the most. Why? Because I love KK Menon. Why can't we watch something simply because it has a good actor? I'm sure you've done it before. Now when the stuff you want to watch also happens to be fantastic stuff, you know you've hit the jackpot, but when it doesn't, you know you fucked up. Bahurupia is about a man who's an outcast, a loner, a bit of a psychopath, molded unintentionally by the very society he lives in. It's about an absolutely crazy guy and how he discovers the art of impersonation to satisfy his cravings of lust, revenge, social acceptance, and just feeling powerful. He finds the self-respect and confidence he wants behind the facade of another person's face. The final twist at the end of this movie is a very thought-provoking one that's slightly open to interpretation, and I loved it. Rajesh Sharma puts up a very commendable performance in this movie. I do, however, wish the final results of the prosthetic work that KK Menon's character does during the movie were either fully shown to be him with makeup or fully its own separate cast. I didn't like the fact that only Rajesh Sharma's impersonation was played by Rajesh Sharma himself. Felt a lack of consistency there. Now, this movie was written better, but not way better. KK Menon's acting doesn't even need a separate mention at this point. Guy's simply a master of his craft. I felt he pulled off the best performance in the show out of all the other 4 leading protagonists. This movie was dark and engaging. I personally enjoyed it. That being said, it did have a very creepy vibe. One even more creepy than the first movie. And that is saying something. Not sure how well that would sit with everyone. So I'd give this one a 66 out of 100. Episode 3. And this one's called Hangama Hai Kyun Barpa. And this one's based on the short story Barin Bhomik Air Byaram. Now, because of how much I love Manoj Bajpayee, I absolutely loved seeing him right after Family Man. And nope, it didn't feel like an overdose at all. I'll take it all. I love the guy. Link to my Family Man review is right there under the I tab. Directed by Abhishek Chaubey, this movie is about a former kleptomaniac that attains fame by focusing all his energy on becoming a great ghazal singer. He encounters a victim of his thievery after a few years in a train compartment, and this serendipitous encounter branches into what is most of the movie being shot in a train compartment. This claustrophobia is felt by us while watching this, and it keeps you guessing throughout the runtime as to where and how this will end. This movie is a much more light-hearted one, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was equally helmed by Gajaraj Rao, an actor I absolutely adore, and he has a lot of screen time. He's such a calming on-screen presence, and with some masterful dialogue delivery, he pulls off a very versatile yet tame performance in this movie. He absolutely kills it. The conclusion again has a very literature-esque quality to it, one that's thought-provoking and one that suddenly takes you to this fantasy world. No, it doesn't turn into Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. It's just a certain mild element of fantasy that I find myself noticing in these stories. Believable fantasy that's not over the top, but beautiful. And this movie is an elegant and playful one. I liked it a lot, and I'd like to give this one 76 out of 100. The music in this movie was particularly nice and frankly quite catchy. It deserves a special nod. Episode 4. This one's called Spotlight, and it's based on the story Spotlight. It also has elements of the story Devi. Now, I was really thrilled to see Harshvardhan Kapoor's role in this series, as I genuinely liked him in Bhavesh Joshi's Superhero. In that movie though, he actually only had one look. Wasn't acting or emoting a whole lot. That being said, it worked for the movie, and the movie itself was quite an amazing one, despite its flaws. In this Vasan Bala directorial, we see him pretty much playing his own real-life character from what I can judge. And it's quite fun. I love it when an actor can laugh at himself. He's an actor who's a star, but just from repeating formulaic tropes that always result in commercial success. He's a star that's got one look. Reminded me of the Ben Stiller Zoolander look. The movie explores an actor searching for purpose, looking for validation, and his hunger to always be treated as if he's the biggest shit in the room. An actor's entitlement and ego clashes with the arrival of an extremely commercial saint/guru with a cult following that exceeds that of any actor. This character is played by Radhika Madan and seems to be an updated version of the character Doimoi from the Satyajit Ray film Devi. I absolutely love Radhika Madan. She was introduced in, again, Vasan Bala's Mard Ko Dard Nahi Hota, a movie that I repeat watched because of how original, funny and well-paced it was. You need to give it a watch. It's available on Netflix. If you've not seen it, that is. Finally, exploring the breakdown of an actor's ego and an arc of female empowerment for Radhika Madan's Didi. This movie was my favorite of the lot. With a runtime of just an hour, these are tough emotions to portray effectively when the focus of the movie is still on dry humor. So naturally, this movie doesn't deliver the emotional punch it was going for, but it still was a very funny one to watch. I give this one again a 76 out of 100. Excellent music again. Kind of funny, actually. Director Basan Bala certainly has my attention. He's piqued my interests. Now, for the final verdict. The show, Ray, seems to be dealing predominantly with very abnormal characters. Like, it's not even interested in normalcy, not even in the supporting cast. There also seems to be the overarching theme of self-doubt and introspection. The protagonist's character looks into a mirror for a scene in almost every movie. The selected stories and thereby the show seem to be heavy on self-exploration and finding a means of catharsis. Satyajit Ray's stories seem to be having a very elegant and transient characteristic. One that's very thought-provoking and one that's extremely character-driven. Even in 2021, the fact that these stories feel very original is no mean feat. The concepts are fantastic, but would Satyajit Ray be happy to see these particular adaptations of his previous works? No, I don't think he'd be satisfied. But that being said, I think he'd commend the effort very much and the intent behind them. He's a man who was decades ahead of his time, clearly. I'm very inspired to read and watch his past works after watching this. And as a note to his anniversary, I'd say this show was successful if it invokes that curiosity in you. The average of all the scores I've given each movie comes out to be 69.5. That being said, I'd prefer to round that down to an overall score of 69 out of 100. I just don't feel it's a 70 out of 100 show. It's not going to be watchable by a large amount of people, mainly due to the first two movies. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe here if you like this review and follow me on Instagram for early updates. Link to my Insta is in the description. Have a good time at the movies, guys. See ya.